So if you were interested in a career in tech, what route would you take right now? Some people say, oh, go to college, get a 4-year degree. Other people say, oh, you can learn everything on the internet right now, just self-teach yourself. Or there's that other option, a coding bootcamp. So in this video, is a coding bootcamp worth it? That's going to be the question we're going to answer. What's going on? My name is Joseph Frazier. I am a coding bootcamp instructor as well as a software engineer. And in today's video, we're going to talk about whether or not a coding bootcamp is the right choice for you to make in 2023. Now, full disclosure, I am a coding bootcamp instructor. I've been involved in this scene for several years. And at the same time, my answer might be a little biased, but I'm looking at it from also the industry as a whole and kind of like working as a software engineer. What do I see the skills that a software engineer needs to know if they were to start their job in tech? So reason one, why would you choose a bootcamp? Accelerated learning. Let me talk about it for a sec. So accelerated learning, you look at a traditional 4-year degree at a college, maybe 5 years if you decide to major in something else or your program's structured a little way. A bootcamp provides a much faster course for accelerating learning. If you look at different bootcamp programs that are available online, you'll typically see anything from like 12 weeks, 13 weeks, 16 weeks, some even go up to like 24 weeks, depending if it's full-time or part-time. And while that still is a long amount of time in comparison to college, where you got to get a 4-year degree and you have to be there and go through all of these other different classes, a bootcamp can really focus your learning in a much faster time. Number 2, focused curriculum. So when I think of focused curriculum, I'm thinking about the time that I have a student here with me. So like, let's say, for example, I have a brand new student who comes in from a non-technical background and they're like, hey, Joe, how am I going to learn to be a software engineer in 16 weeks? And I'm like, that's a great question. I got the curriculum for you because I know exactly what I want you to know. So that way, if you are on my team at one of the positions that I've held in the past, how could you jump in, immediately provide value to the team and also start contributing to the code? And so focusing our curriculum at a bootcamp is really important because we want to make sure that every day of every week within the time frame that we have you is focused on real world applicable skills that you can use, as well as things that you can kind of like take and then explore on your own to kind of like build upon them. So like I might teach you the fundamentals of functions and then immediately start jumping into programs where it's like, oh, do we see how this program is utilizing a lot of different functions from a lot of different things? Or I'm thinking like, oh, HTML, CSS, and now you learn JavaScript and here's a front-end framework like React. Okay, well, there are other frameworks out there like Angular, like Vue, and like now you can understand this is how React works, but now you can take that and learn like, okay, well, how does Angular work? And you can transition those skills that you've learned from the bootcamp into the real world. So that's typically the focus of what we want to do with our curriculum, and that's one of the benefits that you get at a coding bootcamp. Number 3, hands-on experience. So when I say hands-on experience is I'm going to basically be teaching you like the practical things that I think realistically you as a software engineer in your entry-level position are going to do on your first week, your first month, your first 3 months, your first year, right? Like we're not going to throw entry-level people into like, oh, here, you're going to handle all of the database itself and you're going to figure it all out on your own. And by the way, all of our client data is in there. So if you mess up, we're screwed. No, we're not going to do that. That's typically not what we want to teach you. So I want to teach you the skills that are going to be applicable by giving you hands-on experience based off of the things that I did when I worked at X industry or Y industry like that. So like for a good example, so I worked in oil and gas. We developed software, and the software we used was to track water coming up from the ground. Well, when I first got on that team, I didn't start just manipulating and changing the program completely. I wasn't going in and making a major feature. They were like, hey, can you update this one value in this one column? And I was like, sure, yeah, I can do that. And realistically, what did I need to know to update that one value in that one column? That's kind of what I want to focus on and teach you when I teach you at my bootcamp in my classes, because I think that if I can go in there and relate my hands-on experience and kind of like tell you like, hey, this is what I was doing when I was in my first year in my first job, and then now this is what you would probably have to do in a similar situation, maybe in a different industry. You can take that information, you can kind of absorb it, put your own little spin on it, and then you can start applying it immediately to a team and start contributing right away because you've had real world experience or real world examples given to you by your instructor. Now, full disclaimer here, okay? If you're working at a startup or you're working at a, let's say, a well-funded startup, and maybe you have to wear a lot of hats, right? That experience is going to be very, very different than someone who works at a large company like a bank or healthcare industry or oil and gas. That's going to be very different. So the hands-on experience that your instructor brings to the table and is able to convey to you is extremely important. So that's a thing you definitely want to pay attention to, but that's also another big benefit that you get compared to an instructor at a college who might have just been in pure academia or might have been out of the industry for several years. Number 4, we got real world projects. Let me explain. So like real world projects, how much can you actually build in a coding bootcamp? And I'm not going to pretend to say like, oh yeah, our students are making like the most advanced stuff and they're able to go in and develop systems that have never been seen before. Like realistically, I don't think that's the case. Like you're going to be building probably a lot of what a lot of other people have made at a coding bootcamp or online, and you're going to see a lot of those projects. But the difference is you'll be able to take the concepts that project was made in and kind of further apply it and grow. So let me give you an example and I can show you what I mean by that. So like, let's say you're making a weather application, right? Okay, so weather application, it has like, let's say a front end in HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. And then all of your functionality you're gonna be using is JavaScript. So you understand how to write that. And then maybe you're interacting with an API, right? So an API to get your weather data, like that. Simple application. You've probably seen a ton of them on YouTube, or you can find a ton of them online. If I was to take that example as an instructor and I say like, okay, let's remove the weather data. Let's remove just using vanilla HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. Let's use like a framework like React, okay? All right, and we're gonna create the server ourselves and make that API. We're going to create that. We're going to create the front end so that we can accept in the requests that the person is going to be using. And then we're going to hook up a back and like, let's say like a Elephant SQL or a Supabase or a Firebase or something like that. And then we're going to scale this project and make it related to, let's just say data about traffic. Okay. Now you're taking like a simple concept that was there before with the weather application, but you're further expanding it and kind of seeing it in a more general way. But at the same time, you're able to see like, oh, this architecture of what we're designing in this project, this is something that could be used in this industry or in this project or in this technology. You're starting to see like small little pieces of bigger architecture that exist out there in the world, and having an instructor or having a person break that down for you and understand why you're building the way you're building it, or what's its purpose and how it fits in this ecosystem or anything like that, that's a massive advantage in comparison to say like you go to college and you may not program as much, or you might learn only the fundamentals of let's say C#, and you're not really building projects that would mimic or look like a real world one. You're building things in a more theoretical environment or academic environment, and you're not really utilizing them right away in the real world. Now, that is dependent, obviously, on your computer program and what is being taught at your college, but a lot of the times that's what's missing, and that's what's available to you at these coding boot camps. They take in real world systems, they take in real world concepts and try to shrink them down so that you can digest them as a student in a short couple of weeks. But then you can also take those systems and expand them and see the differences and understand the way the front end communicates with the back end, communicates with different microservices or different cloud services or different databases. And number 5, my last reason for it is that the cost. So like, let's take a step back and we're looking at a coding bootcamp and you're like, Joe, coding bootcamps range anywhere from like $9,500 to like $15,000. Like that's a lot of money. And yeah, I agree. That's a lot of money. Typically something that you can't get a student loan for or use financial aid for. Like that's going to be a private loan and you're going to have interest rates, and yeah, that's a lot of money. And I don't want to downplay that at all. But then like, let's compare that to other college programs, right? So the college itself might be like, let's just say it cost you $20,000 or $40,000 for an entire 4-year degree, right? I'm shooting on the low end. And then not only that, like it also takes up 4 years of your life, right? So like the cost of the college might be more expensive dollar-wise, but don't forget about the time that you have to spend in the 4-year college degree. And that's if you do graduate in 4 years, right? And you also got your other classes that you have to go through, other things that you have to like spend your time on that is not purely focused on the skills you need to get a job in the industry you want to be in right now. So when you look at that, a coding bootcamp that takes 16 weeks of your time for $15,000 compared to a college that takes maybe like $30,000-$40,000, but it takes 4 years of your time there. Both have value. Don't get me wrong. Both have value, but it's up to you to really look at the true cost of a coding bootcamp compared to the cost of a 4-year college degree. If it's worth it to you to get that degree, to spend that money, to spend that time, you're going to be successful either way because you understand the worth of what you're getting and you're going to be focused on that. But if you can't spend 4 years for your time that way, or you don't want to spend $40,000 on a college degree and have to go through a bunch of different classes and it still doesn't guarantee you a job, well, then a coding bootcamp might be a really good alternative. Now, a coding bootcamp for sure doesn't guarantee you a job at all, nor does it guarantee you that the skills you learn right there are immediately going to get you a job in 2 weeks, 3 weeks, or anything like that. There's still things that you have to apply. There's still things that you're going to have to learn and do on your own. But if we're looking at the overall cost, I still think that coming out of coding bootcamp, you come out a little bit cheaper as well as spending a lot less time. Now, we've talked about like 5 reasons why coding bootcamps are a good option for you to take, but let's talk about 3 different reasons why I think you might need to consider a different option rather than a coding bootcamp. Number 1 for sure on this one would be that sometimes people can't commit to a full-time schedule of spending 16, 17 weeks without being able to have a job, pay for their normal living expenses, or they have to take care of a family, right? That time commitment that you have to make at a boot camp can be really, really taxing on certain people. And some people realistically can't take 16 weeks away out of the year to just focus on learning and education. So I understand that if you can't do that and you're not able to make that commitment, a coding bootcamp option might not be good for you. Number 2, the other thing that I want to definitely emphasize on is that not all coding bootcamps are created equal. Okay, so let me expand a little bit on this one. If you look online right now and do a Google search, you'll see a ton of different coding bootcamps pop up, and you're kind of wondering, well, which program should I take, right? You have these schools that are rated really high on this one side, or you have these other programs that might be a local to you or something like that. Which one of these is going to give me the best education? And that's the part right there where it's still a little blurry. A lot of these coding bootcamps teach the same concepts, the same topics, maybe the same styles, and maybe even the same languages. So you really have to kind of do your own research and look at their instructors and look at their curriculum and look at the reviews and the reports. And you kind of have to put a lot of effort on your own learning about these things and kind of seeing if this is the right program for you, rather than, going to a traditional college where, they have a long track record of having a great IT program or great computer science program or something like that, or they have the opportunity to get internships, or kind of the connections and networks that they provide for their students are a lot better. You might see a coding bootcamp not have that, and so not all coding bootcamps are created equal by any means. And reason 3, typically online learning. Okay, so online learning, I love it. I think it's great. I teach fully online. I don't do any in-person classes. But that's not everyone's style, and it does come with its cons for sure. And so if a coding bootcamp is teaching you only online, it might be really hard for you to digest the information, to pay attention, to spend the time that you need to learn the concept. You're already spending all this time and money on this program, and then you're having to do it kind of a little asynchronously and a remote on your own, and you're kind of I don't know if this is the best for me. And I totally get that. That's not always the best way that people need to learn. And so a 4-year college that you need to go into, students and classmates that you get to see every day, teachers that you can walk up to and point on your screen hey, I'm running into this issue, or I have a question about this concept, right? That is so valuable and that is so helpful. And I don't want to understate that not everyone can learn purely online. Some people can, and I think it's amazing and it's awesome that we can do that. But not everyone can. And if you fall into that category, that's a total reason why maybe a coding bootcamp isn't for you. All right, so those are a few reasons why I think coding bootcamps are an awesome opportunity for a lot of people, and a few reasons why you might need to consider a different learning option. But either way, however you get your first step into tech, whether it's through a coding bootcamp, a self-taught, or you going through a traditional 4-year degree, the world of tech is awesome. I think it provides so much opportunity for a lot of people, and it kind of really hits the things that a lot of people find important today, whether it's earning a good salary or being able to have control of your work-life balance, or just expanding your career opportunities more than what you're currently in right now. The world of tech is awesome, and however you get into it is honestly up to you. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you like this kind of content, feel free to leave a comment down below. Subscribing to this channel and liking this video really helps me out with my YouTube algorithm, so please and thank you. I'll see you guys in the next video where we talk about what is it like in the day of a coding bootcamp instructor. See you then.